Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin in just a few moments. Give people a few more moments to get logged in and familiar with the webinar settings. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District's 2027 to 2031 Proposed Rates Industrial Customer Webinar. My name is Danny Nealon, and I'm from our Communications and Customer Relations Department. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. This webinar will be recorded, so those that were unable to attend today's meeting will be able to find this recording on our website at neorsd.org/rates. We do welcome any questions at any time using Zoom's Q&A function. You may find that at the bottom of your screen. It's a box with a question mark in it, or under the More tab. If you click More and then find the Q&A function, you can ask us questions there at any time, and we may answer those live right in the chat in real time, or we'll ask our presenters directly at the end of the webinar. If you have any additional questions that were not answered in today's webinar, you can send us those at any time at askus@neorsd.org or contact your district representative directly. And at this time, I will turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Ken Duplay, who will be leading today's webinar. Thanks, Ken.
All right. Thank you, Danny. And good afternoon, everyone online. As Danny mentioned, I'm Ken Duplay, Chief Financial Officer for Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. I'm going to start off with a brief look at our agenda for today. I'll lead us off with a quick overview of our rate study process, some of the assumptions that go into this rate study, how we developed our rates or proposed rates for the next 5 years. Carol Molesky, Senior Principal from Stan Tech Consulting Services, will then walk us through the detailed work that she and her team helped the district go through to develop these rates, the detailed cost allocations and the proposed rate schedules. And then Scott Broski, who is the Superintendent of Environmental Services here at Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, will walk us through some slides on how we as a sewer district can work with you as a customer to help potentially lower your bill or maximize your ability to take advantage of savings. So rate study, at a glance, what is the process? So it's a process that starts at the highest level with asking the question with revenue requirements. What does the sewer district need to raise in terms of revenue over the next 5 years to meet our operating expenditures at our plants, administrative costs, capital needs, all the costs associated with running the system? How will we collect those revenues? So that's that cost allocation process, that cost of service analysis. Different customers place different demands on the system. So we have to come up with a systematic way to allocate those costs to the customers. And then ultimately that leads to rates. So what does that rate structure look like in terms of how we recover those revenues from the customers to make sure that we can run our system and deliver our services as efficiently and effectively as possible? So the high level scope of the rate study involves really 4 main tasks. Financial planning. Financial planning is looking at our long-term needs, our forecasts of expenses, revenues, assumptions around inflation and other factors that will impact us over the next 5 to 10 years. That cost of service analysis, looking at the detailed different classes of customers, as I said, the demands they place on the system, how they drive the costs that need to be recovered. Finally, the rate development component. We have a monthly fixed fee component to our sewer rate, a volumetric rate based on water usage. And for some customers, this is why many of you are here today, who produce a higher than typical strength of waste, a surcharge is applied, and that is also used to help recover some of the additional costs associated with that waste. For our residential customers, there's a fourth factor where we look closely at the affordability, and we offer programs for residential customers with low income or other issues through our homestead and rate reduction programs where they can receive a 40% discount off their rates, but those apply just to residential customers. So really quickly, some of the assumptions. So as I mentioned, our financial planning, we look at our long-term capital program. We look at different forecasts in terms of best and worst case scenarios. It's no different than any other organization, and best and worst case inflation. And we have to plan to be able to deliver the services that we have to provide every day to all of our customers and make sure that we've got the revenues to do that. Those rate elements where we look at the different cost drivers and the different components of the specific rate, the fixed fee, the affordability. We have no significant changes to our rate elements, this rate study. But as always, we do project that we will need to increase rates over this 5-year period. Carol will talk a little bit about specifically what those increases will look like. I can say that we will be on our basic sewer rates. We're currently recommending a 2% annual increase over the next 5 years to our sewer rates. And then finally, the assumptions around our affordability programs, our ability to enroll customers in those cost-saving programs, customers in need, when they have the ability to pay, a better ability to pay the bill, is more likely to be collected from them. And a lot of our work is around outreach to those customers as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carol Molesky, and she will start a deep dive into the work that she did with her team and the sewer district staff to really analyze that cost of service and how it relates to the industrial rates that we're here to talk about today.
Thank you, Ken, and good afternoon, everyone. As Ken said, I'm Carol Molesky with Stantec, and during the last 6 or 7 months, we've been working with sewer district staff to really understand the sewer district process and impacts, particularly on the industrial users. The process that we follow, the cost of service process that's undertaken after we look at the budgets and the capital improvement programs, et cetera, are intended to allocate all of those costs to different components of the system. In particular, the steps that you see on the screen. The next slide shows a better diagram of these steps. So if we go to the next slide, we start with the wastewater budget for the sewer district. So this includes operations and maintenance expenses. This includes debt service for borrowed funds. This includes any cash-funded projects that are undertaken. And with the help of sewer district engineering staff, our rate study team takes those costs and helps allocate them across the different components of the system. Our goal is to look and see how does the flow and how do the flow constituents influence the costs. So if we're looking at preliminary treatment, primary treatment, secondary treatment, disinfection, and solids handling, waste load definitely influences the cost for those different components. We ultimately take those costs that are assigned to those cost categories and allocate them then to the pollutants, the biochemical oxygen demand, the chemical oxygen demand, the total suspended solids. So you'll hear me call them BOD, COD, and TSS going forward. So this process helps us understand how those flows and how the loadings contribute to the costs and drive the costs. We also look at the flow costs. So this is the cost based on just volume of waste. So this is measured in terms of 1,000 cubic feet, or MCF. The ultimate result then are unit costs, or cost per unit of BOD, cost per unit of COD and TSS and MCF. We take those unit costs and then develop the rates. Ken gave you a little tip that as a result of the cost of service analysis, our rate projections from 2027 through 2031 are 2% per year. So for the fixed cost recovery charge, so that's the charge all of you pay per month, regardless of waste load and regardless of flow, that is projected to increase at 2% per year. And then the volume charge per MCF also is projected to increase at 2% per year. What's different in this table are the industrial surcharges. Some of you might remember from the blast rate study that we actually focus on the industrial surcharges because part of the cost of service study intends to look at that waste load and again, how that influences the costs. These costs don't always go up at the across the board increases that we see for the rest of the rate structure. So in this analysis, we've identified a need to increase the industrial surcharges by an average of 2.8% per year. So that's both the BOD, COD, and TSS charges. The rate schedule that you see here is the projected schedule for 2027 through 2031. There's a lot going on here, so I'll walk through these columns. For each of the years, we see a monthly fixed cost recovery charge. As I mentioned, that's the cost per month, regardless of how much flow you discharge. Your current rate is $11.90 per month. That is projected to increase at 2% per year. So if you get your calculators out, that should total to the 2%, with a little bit of a caveat that these rates are rounded to the nearest nickel. The next column is the regular base charge. This is the volume charge per MCF of flow. All users pay this charge per MCF. In fact, even industrial users, if you are a user who's just discharging normal domestic strength waste, you will pay this charge at a minimum because this charge includes a base load of pollutants and the base load cost. So currently that's $130.75 per MCF. And you'll see that that also increases at 2% per year with some rounding to the nearest nickel. The next column is just a simple base charge where we strip out that domestic strength loading. So if we don't consider any BOD or COD or TSS, strictly flow, we get a charge per MCF. That's about $15 difference between the regular base charge and the base charge excluding the pollutants. So it's about $15 per MCF to treat that base amount of pollutant. The last two columns you may be more familiar with. This is the charge or surcharge that is a pollutant cost per MCF per milligram per liter of waste. So what we're showing here are the charges for BOD. COD is actually a multiple of the BOD. So for the BOD charge per MCF per milligram per liter, that current rate is 0.03 cents and some change. So that rate, actually, if you take your calculator out, that increases at a different rate. The same thing is true for TSS, or total suspended solids. It's almost 3 cents per MCF per milligram per liter. And as we go forward, that average increase is applied to that 2026 surcharge. These projected surcharges were actually, in the last study, projected to be higher. So this chart that you may be familiar with has been updated since the last rate study, and we show a history of the percentage change in the rates per MCF. So we look at a residential user represented by the blue bars versus an example industrial user represented by the yellow bars. Those yellow bars include an extra strength, so it includes higher than domestic strength. Therefore, it includes a customer who might receive a surcharge for that extra pollutant loading. If you do not have extra pollutants, then your rate increase, those bars, will be closer or be just like the blue bars for the residential percentage increases. This slide shows us what has happened historically and why do we have these differences in the blue bars and the yellow bars. So what's the difference between the residential increases and the industrial user increases over time? Historically, there were no changes to the TSS, MBOD, and COD surcharges. It was simply that increase in the volumetric or that charge per MCF that drove that change from year to year. In the middle period of our chart, we see that the recommendation was to normalize the BOD surcharges to the TSS surcharges. They were out of sync and not according to the costs of service at the time. Starting in 2017, you'll see a bit of a larger increase in those example industrial user bars. And that's because at that time, we did a whole review of those cost drivers for TSS and BOD and COD. Therefore, those increases were higher for that period. We are now continuing in that stable year-over-year increase in both the volumetric and the fixed cost recovery charges, as well as the industrial surcharges. So you'll see that the increases are coming down, they're getting lower. And that is all because of the sewer district's management of the operations and maintenance costs and of the capital improvement program. I'm going to ask Mr. Brodsky to take over from here.
Thank you, Carol. So what I'd like to talk about today is the opportunities for businesses to reduce their surcharges. So I'll start by saying any industrial user in our service area is free to reach out to us at any time. We'd be happy to meet with you, talk about your operations, look at where you use water, where you generate wastewater, and determine what recommendations we may be able to provide you to help guide you in making decisions that could lower your surcharge rate. With that, we'll talk about these three potential topics today: on-site pretreatment and chemical reduction, operational and source reduction, and volume reduction strategies as some opportunities that may be available to you to assist in this. So starting with on-site pretreatment and chemical reduction. This is a way that you can reduce your surcharge, but it does not make the cost completely go away, because pretreatment is going to come at a cost. It's just a matter of, is this a cost that you can control at your site and be lower than what you're paying us to treat the waste for you? Because the on-site pretreatment is going to be on-site, you're going to be doing that yourselves, and you're going to be working to lower your biochemical oxygen demand, chemical oxygen demand, and total suspended solids. But it's going to come at a cost, because you're going to have to buy equipment, you're going to have chemicals, you're going to have to manage residuals and everything that comes along with that. But there's a business case to be made in every situation where that may be something that you can do more cost effectively yourself, or it may make sense for you to send that waste to the sewer district and have us do that treatment for you. But it is an option, and it is always something that should be considered. If you have a grease trap or a grease interceptor, you're probably in some sort of food-related industry. because that's where we see most of these, but it can be in other applications as well. Grease interceptors, they need to be cleaned regularly. They build up fats, oils, and grease. And if they are not serviced regularly, they'll start to have some pass through, and that will, in fact, test high for your oxygen demand, and that will cause your surcharge rate to go up. So this is something you want to pay particular attention to, making sure that they're serviced regularly, and that maintenance of those pieces of equipment will, in fact, help reduce your surcharge. From a chemical management perspective, we want to always make sure that we're optimizing our cleaning to reduce the amounts of chemicals going down the drain. A lot of processes, again, especially in the food industry, require some very specific cleaning. So you want to do that when it's necessary. You want to do that after, full batches have been processed, and, reduce the amount of chemicals to just the amount that makes sense to get things cleaned the way they should properly be cleaned. Limiting the amount of chemical that goes down the drain will also reduce your surcharge. We'll talk a little bit about operational and source reduction. And I probably should have put this slide first, because this really is what you need to do to be effective. But you should look at your facility, map all of your waste streams, and understand where your highest concentrations of contaminants originate, because that will give you an opportunity to make operational decisions. You may be able to segregate waste streams. Something may need pre-treatment, and you can pre-treat a smaller volume and have a bigger impact than if those wastes all come together and then you try to pre-treat at the end. It just depends on how your operation is set up and what you're doing in generating wastewater. But understanding what your processes are and where they have an impact on that surcharge rate will help allow you to make the most informed decisions in terms of lowering your surcharge. You also want to improve your product yields to reduce the need for excessive washdowns and changeovers. This can be done a number of ways. One is running full batches and producing as much of your product at a single time as possible, so that you're not running partial batches that need to have equipment cleaned more frequently. Another thing with product efficiency is making sure that all of the product is getting into the containers that it belongs in. So if you're a chemical blender making a particular chemical, you want to drain your blending vessel as much as possible into your product containers, so that any leftover product that's in your blending vessel doesn't become part of your waste stream. If you're making a food product, a juice, a beer, or something of that nature, you want to get as much of that product into its containers and not onto the floor or down a drain, because your product can also be the cause of a high surcharge. So you want to capture all of that. The more you capture that, the better you're doing in terms of getting your product out and not wasting. And the more product that you can make in a single batch and reducing those washdowns creates less wash water and less high strength waste that would be surchargeable. Another method this is probably primarily in the food industry again, but it could be elsewhere, is using dry cleaning methods to remove solids rather than washing them down the drain. If there's an opportunity that equipment can be wiped down and that solid material can be put into the regular solid waste trash, as opposed to having it become part of the waste stream, again, we're surcharging based on total suspended solids. Those solids could be a driver into your surcharge cost. So if you can get them out of that process through a dry removal or some other way of removing the solids before it goes down the drain, that will also help you reduce your surcharge. And then with volume reductions, all of our sewer bills are based on billed water. Next slide, John. So if you can control the amount of water you're purchasing, you are going to reduce your sewer bill, even if it's not surchargeable. So if you have leaks throughout your facility, whether it's running toilets, which can cost hundreds of dollars a day, to just leaks on process floor, people leaving water running where it doesn't need to be continuously running, controlling that volume is going to reduce your sewer bill. Again, because we bill sewer based on water consumption purchased. There are fixtures that can be installed, low flow fixtures like dual flush toilets. Things on industrial processes could be flow restrictors. I've seen, industrial processes where there's just an on-off valve, and when the valve is on in the open position, water is coming out as fast as that fitting will allow it to come out, which could be a very overuse of water. But there are flow restrictors that can be put on those that can limit to what you need, and you can optimize your process to determine, do I need a gallon a minute into this rinse tank? Do I need 5 gallons a minute? And you can also either through automation or through your standard operating procedures have people control when those valves are on and off, so that if something is not needed to be in a rinse tank or to have continuous flow of water, that those processes be shut down temporarily until the next use, restricting flow and saving you on your usage in that regard. Again, I had mentioned this earlier, but run processes when there's a full batch. Again, optimizing the water usage. The more that you're able to produce in a single batch reduces cleanouts, tank cleanings, things of that nature. Less water purchased, lower sewer bill. And then, go back, I'm sorry. There's water reuse is becoming more and more popular, so you can look at opportunities to reuse water in your plant. Is there one process that could be redirected for a second use? We see this in the metal finishing industry where there's counter current rinsing. Perhaps you have something that is very, very clean, but needs a very final and very good rinse with very clean water. That water could be recaptured and perhaps used in another process where there's some more gross decontamination occurring, where you just need to get, a first flush and things rinsed off. And so if there's an opportunity to reuse water, that would also be a benefit in terms of reducing your sewer bill and potentially your surcharge. And then finally, if you use a large amount of water that doesn't go to the sewer system, we have a program we call SCOOBouts. It's an acronym for Sewer Service Charges based on usage of the system. You should check in with us on that program. Essentially, what we do is have you install metering to quantify water that does not return to the sewer system. That can be in any number of different ways. It could be an irrigation system if you're watering the front lawn. It could be evaporative loss if you have large cooling towers. It could be water into product if you're making paint or beer or any chemical that has a significant water component to it. If you have a lot of water going off into product and you meet the rules of our program, you could potentially save through our SCOOBouts program, and we'd be happy to meet with you and talk to you about that and see where that might be an opportunity for you to reduce your sewer bill and surcharges. And I believe I'm turning it back over to Ken.
Yes, thank you, Scott. So as we move forward this week, this meeting is just one component of our public outreach scheduled all during this week. We've had public meetings on the east side of town earlier this week. We'll be tomorrow in the afternoon and evening at Parma Snow Branch Library. We'll also on Thursday have a morning and evening online virtual webinar. Those will be all more focused on residential customers. Our next steps moving forward after we go through our outreach process will be we will go to our board on June 4th with the request to authorize proposed changes to our rates be presented to our member communities for a 30-day notice. And then after that, we anticipate going to our board for potential of approval of these proposed rates, Code 1 and Code 5 changes on July 16th of this year. So with that, that ends our formal presentation. Here's contact information. Again, if you have questions around high-strength waste or any sort of industrial ways to reduce water usage or lower that bill, you can reach out to Scott Broski. Any general questions about sewer district rates and finances, you can reach out to me. And with that, I will thank everyone for their time and ask Danny if we have any questions from the audience.
Thanks, Ken. At this time, I do not see any questions. Again, you can ask us questions at any time at askus@neorsd.org, or give our customer service a call, or reach out to Ken, like he said, if you have questions specifically about the rates and rate setting process. And if there are no other questions at this time, we'll end the webinar. And thank you all for attending.